for the technical issues. You can see I'm not that good with technology. Often need a bit of help. I have now got some help, so I'm about to start. And the issue I want to talk about is social care, which has been in the news, has been talked about quite a lot. Governments in the UK have been talking about Prime Minister 2 years ago, almost the very first speech he gave, he said he would deal with the issue of social. Some background issues, what the problems are, and how we can actually all proceed. So the fairly useful, a convenient starting point for discussion about social care would be the National Assistance Act 1946, which was implemented in 1948, and it actually created the National Health Service. So at that time, there were two aspects to this National Assistance Act. The first part was that the sick people were to be absorbed into the newly created National Health Service, the NHS. Everything was to be given free at the point of delivery. So that is the beginning of the NHS. However, at the same time, there was a distinction made between the sick and those who need what the Act called care and attention. Those who needed care and attention were placed in residential homes. And reflecting the arrangement, NHS was free at the point of delivery, but local authorities could levy means-tested charges for residential and community care services, such as health visitors. They could also commission fee-charging independent services to provide care and attention. The National Assistance Board, which was created, funded the residential care of those who were unable to afford the charges. Now, the result of this distinction made in the 1946 Act is that, for example, if anyone is suffering from cancer, because that was classified as sickness, they could get unlimited free treatment. But those things which were designated as requiring simply care, which would now include dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, motor neuron, stress, and many mental health problems, would not receive unlimited free care. And that has been the fundamental fault lines. Now, the current approach varies in each nation. The United Kingdom has about 17,500 care homes. About 15,000 of these are in England, and the remainder are in Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. In these care homes, 490,000 people reside. 418, just under 419,000 of these are in England. About 70% of the care home residents are estimated to have dementia or severe memory problems. In 2019 and 20, 838 1,000 adults in England received publicly funded long-term social care. That is a huge number, 838,000. In addition, there were also what they call episodes, 231,000 episodes of short care provided to various individuals. Also in that year, 1.9 million requests were received and 1.4 million were from older people. Older means over 65. Now just think about that statistic. And 1.4 million are from older people. Now that statistic tells us that care home is simply not just an issue exclusively for the elderly. It also affects adults of any age. So those statistics mean that roughly local authorities are receiving requests for social care help from 5,290 people every day. That is a huge pressure on local authorities. Local authorities are responsible under law for the provision of social care. That responsibility goes back to the 1946 Act. So that is the kind of background. Now, the social care was almost exclusively provided by local authorities way back in the 1940s and 50s, and even right until 1980, 90% of the beds in care homes with outsourcing. Of England's care home beds, 83.6% of care home beds. That is a huge statistic. Around 13% of beds are provided by the voluntary sector, generally charities and not-for-profit organizations, and only 3% of the care home beds now are controlled by local authorities. Now you can see why this sector may have been attractive to corporations, because it provided guaranteed income. All you had to do was put up a care home, a local authority would send you customers with a guaranteed price, guaranteed income. And that was attractive to many. So corporations, private equity, hedge funds all piled in. Today, private equity, and I'll come to say more about that later, owns 1 in 8 care homes beds in England. That is a lot of money. Now, the introduction of corporations that once companies have made profit, in a lower amount is available for actually to be spent on the frontline care of the people who need it the most. So when, for example, private equity came in, private equity is looking for all kind of returns. Private equity generally load businesses up with a lot of debt. A lot of it is artificial debt, and then they will then seek to charge interest on that debt, and they will try to recover that. They will also, through intra-group transactions, add in things like royalty fees, management fees, many other fees. In other words, they will try to suck out returns from care homes. On average, private equity owners have loaded each bed in care homes with 30 for the amounts which are actually spent on social care. Now, the big corporations that come into social care have a very complex organizational structure, which makes it very, very difficult to even track things. For example, the big 26 providers of care homes are part of large corporate groups which have 2,500 members. Now you can see you can farm out all kind of things to these companies through intra-group transactions and then try to profit for it. So there is that issue to be considered. So why has the provision of care, social care, shifted away from local authorities? The answer is it is really the government policies. So the government's decided from the 80s onwards that it was a good idea to outsource or even cover their costs. So some of them are saying that this is not very good for the future. So in 2018 and 19, local authorities in England received 31% of their funding from government grants, 52% from council tax, and 17% from business rates. Unlike central governments, local authorities cannot borrow to finance day-to-day spending, so they must either run a balanced budget or draw down upon their reserves, which are obviously not unlimited. So central government grants have actually been cut by 38% in real terms between 2009 and 10 and 2018 and 19. That is a massive cut in real terms, 38%. At the same time, local council statutory duties, such as, for example, to provide social care, have not diminished. So faced with reduced budgets, local authorities note I said the word assets, not just cash or saving, assets worth more than 23,250. That is the number for England. It is slightly different for the other home countries. So people with assets worth more than 23,250 are not normally eligible to receive any support from the public purse for social care. So where the assets are lower than 14,250, so that's the lower threshold, individuals will pay, what the law says, only what they can afford from their income. So the individuals falling in between 14,250 and 23250 will pay an affordable amount, which will be assessed by the relevant local authority. So the assessment which any local authority might make is not portable. So if you happen to change your address or peculiarities. For example, if a person needs a paid carer to come into his or her home, the value of your house will not be included in the financial assessment. But if the person is in a care home, then the value of home will be included unless the spouse or partner is still living in that house. Now you can see there is no consistency here. So those not qualifying for council help with costs are expected to pay the full cost. Of course, you can go private. So the Competition and Market Authority investigated this market and noted that self-pay fees, if you pay yourself, on average you pay 41% more than compared to what the local authority pays for the same care home. Lots of corporations are now building care homes where they don't take any customers who are sanctioned by a local authority. They rather sell directly to self-funders and make more money by charging higher fees. So in 2019 and 20, that is the last year, the total expenditure on adult social care by local authorities was £23.3 billion. All that has actually come out of local council tax and any central government grant and so on. So last year, the expenditure was 23.3 billion. That is 1 billion more than the previous year. But if you adjust for inflation, it is only 99 million pound more than it was in 2010 and 11. So not a lot of increase. In addition to that, the National Audit Office tells us that self-funders are also spending. How much? We don't have. As I said at the beginning, social care is not an issue just for the elderly. It is an issue for everyone. So half of the expenditure is on working age adults, and the remainder is on people aged 65 or over. So for older people, the majority of spending is for those who need physical support, while for working age adults, 70% or so of the expenditure goes on those with learning disabilities. So there's a lot of problem here by simply saying is just an issue for the elderly. It is not. So in 2019 and 20, the average cost of a local authority funded care home place in England for someone over 65 was on average £679 a week. But for a working age adult who needs remember, this study is 11 years old, so the number obviously is higher now. And even then, it was estimated that 10% of those in care homes will incur costs of £100,000 or more. Just think about it, £100,000 or more. So what the government permitted was local authorities from 2016 to add what they call a social care precept to council tax. The idea was to increase local councils' funding to meet social care. However, that is unsatisfactory because there is no relationship between the amount raised and the volume and social care that is needed in any local area. Some areas, because of disabilities in young adults or perhaps problems of senior citizens, they may need more, but they can't raise enough through council tax. So that policy is afford to accumulate enough in their own pension pots. It leads to loss of other problems. So clearly, simply relying upon family and friends to provide social care is not really tenable. Okay. So restoring access to local authority funding for many individuals would help also to relieve this pressure upon friends and family, also relieve pressure upon the NHS, because many people who are taking care of their relatives, perhaps providing social care, they themselves are stressed out. So again, there are problems. Now, the government tells us that it is possible to provide individualized social care, or the care homes claim that that is what they do. Well, that is not really feasible. So let me again go through some statistics. Let's look at the employment in care homes. The social sector in the UK, the equivalent to 1.2 million full-time jobs. Thousand vacancies, unfilled jobs. Every year there is 30% plus staff turnover. So think about it. A care home worker gets to know somebody, there's a 30% chance they won't be around to provide service to that individual the next year. 24% of care home workers are on 0 hour contracts. Almost 42% of the domiciliary care workforce, that is individuals who visit a sick person at home, almost 42% of those are on 0 hour contracts. Care home workers' median real term pay in March 2020 was £8.50 an hour. Just £8.50 an hour. Okay. Now that is incredible. It was £7.60 the year before. The average wage in a care home for a frontline worker is often below the average pay for shop workers and cleaners. Not really surprising, because the person needing care will not see the same individual again. I've experienced that at a personal level. A member of my family suffered from cancer. Every couple of weeks, a very different person would turn up, who we often had to brief first as to what on earth had already happened. Of course, the person was very conscientious, caring, and they are really rushed and pushed. But there we are. At the same time, the executive pay in care homes has soared. It is now around 120 times the pay of care assistants. So you can see what's happened under corporations. Workers' wages have gone down, executive pay has soared. Lots of 0-hour contract workers. The same companies have also paid out record dividends. During COVID, so far the government has admitted that more than 39,000 people have died in care homes. That is a hell of a lot of people. And of course, you have to feel sorry for the care home workers as well. When they are on low pay, living in miserable conditions, poor housing, denied good food, how on earth are they going to easily isolate? How can they survive? And not really surprising that there have been lots and lots of casualties uh, amongst care home workers as well. So this financialization of care homes has been disastrous. Number of private equity provided controlled homes have gone bust. Two have been reasonably well written about. One was Southern Cross and one was Four Seasons. So at the time of its collapse in 2011, Southern Cross was owned by a private equity firm which controlled 31,000 care home residents. And most of these care homes were then sold on to somebody else. And that somebody else was Four Seasons. And then in 2017, Four Seasons went bankrupt. It had 17,000 residents. So when these care homes go bankrupt, the buck ends up with the local authorities, because local authorities have the statutory duty, statutory responsibility to provide care home services. So now you can see the moral hazard. You can really run down workers' wages, working conditions, charge exorbitant amounts to those who are self-funding or get what you can out of local authorities, pay out high executive pay, high dividends, and then you declare bankruptcy and the whole thing ends up with a local council again. So a problem. So in 2014, the government created a regulator. It was called Care Quality Commission. One of its jobs, one of its responsibilities is to monitor the financial viability of care homes, which it cannot do. Because in order to monitor viability of any organization, first question you have to ask is what kind of capital must it have? Just like at banks. So at banks, we have the Prudential Regulatory Authority and the Financial Conduct Authority. They are looking at, do banks have adequate capital? Can they withstand some challenges? So they perform stress tests. But Care Quality Commission is not really equipped to do that kind of thing. At best, it can pick up accounts aimed at shareholders and then from there try to make a regulatory sense. That is an impossible thing to do. Accounts which tell shareholders how rich they are will not tell you anything about what the issues are from the perspective of local authority or from the residents in care homes or from taxpayer perspective. So the whole So what is the government doing about it? The answer is nothing. But interestingly, recently a private member's bill appeared in the House of Lords, and it was floated by former Social Security Secretary Lord Lilly, known as Peter Lilly in previous incarnation, and he proposed an insurance-based approach to social care. Now, the title of the bill is quite interesting. It is called Elderly Social Care in bracket Insurance Bill. Note the emphasis in the title on elderly, suggesting that social care is a problem for the elderly. It's an issue. We have an issue because of elderly citizens. I have already provided you some arguments and evidence to show that it is not exclusively an issue for the elderly. More than half of the local authority expenditure on social care relates to young adults who are in social care. But this is completely ignored. Okay, so rolling on forward. Now, this insurance-based approach, he only offers to people who are just reaching the thing to do with those who in 5 years' time, might retire, or as I said earlier, at any age you might need social care. So first thing to note is there is no country on this planet which relies primarily on private insurance to fund social care costs. It is usually a combination of something provided by individuals, could be through national insurance contributions, cash contributions, and through taxations. So Peter Lilly here is offering us something which no other country does. So first question, if this sector was so viable, why is it that insurance companies are not already offering an insurance-based approach to social care? The answer is that they don't want to touch it with a barge pole because this, they feel, is not really going to generate any money for them. So Lord Lilly, Peter Lilly, says, well, the government should set up an insurance company and offer this insurance. Remember, not saying that government should set up a not-for-profit company to run railways, gas, water, electricity, but here he's saying government should set up a not-for-profit company to offer insurance. Okay, so that is interesting. So Lilly argues, based on previous estimates, that a one-off premium of 16,000 earlier, 50% of social care expenditure is on working age adults. So working age adults would not be covered at all. So again, it does not really solve our problem. So do people have this £16,000 lying around? The answer is, of course, they don't. The median household saving in the UK is about £11,000, and 25% of households in the UK have less than £1,800 saved. So clearly people can't simply do this. Okay. 1 in 3 Brits have savings of less than £600. These are the government statistics I'm quoting, published by the Office for National Statistics. Almost 10% of Brits have no savings at all. 41% of people in this country have not enough to last them for more than a month. In other words, if they didn't get a paycheck in another month, they would really struggle. Okay. So what does then Lilly say? He says those who can't afford to pay the insurance premium can offer a charge on their residence to this insurance company which he wants the government to set up. Now let's look at that issue. The house ownership, the home ownership in the UK is declining. In 2003, just under 71% of the homes were owner occupied. That number is now down to 63%. And there are numerous variations. For example, households in the Black African ethnic group have the lowest rates of home ownership. Only 20% of the Black ethnic group own their own home. Only 17% of the Arab ethnic group own their own home. 1 in 6 people still expect to be now paying their mortgage beyond the age of 65. Okay, so again, the idea that you can simply offer a charge is highly problematic. And homes nowadays are rarely owned by one person, they are owned jointly by spouses and partners. So if one person was to take out the proposed social insurance and dies, the surviving partner then risks being made homeless as a result of the charge. Or what about grown-up children who can't get on the housing ladder, can't buy a home of their own, and actually live with their parents? What would happen to them if you offer a charge? The parents, children, appropriate age, what would happen to them? There's no answer to these things. So even if we had an insurance-based approach, it still does not reduce the local authority responsibility. They will still be required to examine eligibility for social care. For example, if a care home goes bankrupt, they then have to decide, what do we now do? And if a care home goes bankrupt, what would happen? Would somebody be asking the government to bail it out? Especially, so it doesn't really solve the problem. So next question is, how do we fund this thing called social care? So social care needs to be fully funded, in my view, from public purse and available to everybody free of charge, regardless of age. Anything less is unjust, unfair, wastes a lot of resources on administration, and abandons people, just sends them to early death. The availability of social care will reduce the pressure on the NHS and also creates possibilities of new job and bright income and wealth inequalities. And privatization has really been a drain because about a quarter of the money vanishes in profits and related charges. So how much more do we actually need to provide in order to get universal free social care? We don't actually know how much more we got to provide, but recently, you can check this on Google, recently a number has been floated that we may need an extra £10 billion, £10 billion a year to fix the social care crisis. May well even be more. And the message coming from the Health Secretary and Prime Minister is that what we need is a hike in basic rate of income tax and higher national insurance contributions. That is a basic rate of 12%. My response is no, none of that is necessary. There are other ways. Firstly, we must end privatization. People's health and well-being should not be a profit opportunity. Private sector has been utterly inefficient, and there is plenty of evidence to see this. come in afterwards. They can fund the services, decide what kind of society we need, and if they feel that the expenditure is inflationary, then they can decide to uh, uh, tax, withdraw some money from the economy via taxes. That is what the advocates of the modern monetary theory would say. However, I have argued that in Parliament. However, there are some who still think about the old-fashioned ways, that you've got to have revenues through taxes. Now, if we insisted that the only option, i.e., the avenue of a modern monetary theory, then we are actually closing the argument. So I want to engage with them in their own term and argue that even if they want to tax and spend in the old-fashioned way, we still have plenty of resources. So in the or so examples. So let me just go through some. If we tax capital gains at the moment in the same way as earned income, those people who pay through PAYE, for example, that would generate £14 billion a year. 14 billion is quite a lot of money. Can certainly resolve all the problems of social crisis care. They only need 10 billion, as some experts say. Currently, the dividends are not taxed in the same way as earned income. If we did, that would raise another £5 billion a year. Currently, government gives about £40 billion a year in tax relief on pension contributions. Some people don't get any. That is 1.5 million people who have bought private pensions, but their annual income is less than 12,570. They get zero support. But most of this 40 billion ends up with 40 and 45% rate taxpayers. If the government reform the tax relief, i.e. gave everybody 20%, which is the basic rate, that generates another £10 billion. So hopefully somebody's counting. I've already found 14 million plus 5 plus another 10 here, 29 billion. Problem solved, and plenty left over to increase pension as well. Now, government could levy financial transactions once upon a time. If that was levied at 30% on things like yachts and expensive cars, that could raise about 1.6 billion a year. We could restore the 50% marginal rate of income tax on incomes over 150,000 a year. That would again uh, raise lots of money. Earlier this year, the Wealth Commission suggested that we should levy a wealth tax. Depending on the rate, it estimated you could raise between 80 billion and 260 billion. That was a one-off tax, 80 billion and 260 billion. Well, of course, we could think of arrangements where a certain percentage is levied each year. Again, we could do that. Currently, national insurance contributions are paid at the rate of 12% on income between 6,515 and 50,270. Income above that attracts national insurance contribution at the rate of only 2%. Why? Suppose we extended this 12% rate on all of the income, or we could come taxes on excessive use of sugar and salt, and they said that could raise 3.4 billion. Since 2010, HMRC, by its own admission, has failed to collect 350 billion in taxes due to avoidance, evasion, error, and others. Other models suggest, and I don't believe HMRC's numbers myself, other models suggest that this number could be between 700 billion and 1400 billion pound. That is in the last decade. Let us imagine, even if HMRC's number is right, 350 billion in last decade. Suppose we even manage to collect half of it. Well, that would be something, wouldn't it? That would certainly resolve our problem. We could introduce withholding tax so that any dividends and interest paid to offshore tax havens, we deduct the basic rate of tax first. This is what a lot of private equity entities do. They've done that at Debenhams, at Maplin, Bird and Matthews care homes, and everywhere else. The government at the moment gives 1,140 tax reliefs, but it does not know what benefit they bring. There is no analysis, no information, no idea. Curtailed. So my point is that there are plenty of resources. There is no shortage of resources. The real problem here is that the governments lack the political will to deal with the issue of social care. They want to deal with it in their own on their own ideological terms. That is forcing poorer people to pay, and they don't really want to fund a universal care. So what I have just argued is that we have the resources without adding a penny to the basic rate of income tax or the 40% rate of income tax, or adding anything to the 12% rate of national insurance contributions for incomes less than £50,000. So social care can be achieved, universal social care can be provided by redistribution. So hopefully next time you read something in a paper from government saying we can't afford it, that is the answer. And hopefully you will think about some of the that female labor is less valued. But I think even when you look at some of the care homes where the person at the top is female, females at the front line are still getting paid very, very poorly. And that is unacceptable. So if you want decent social care, you've got to pay social care workers well. And also at the domestic level, if members of family are taking care, if they are taken out of employment, they should really get a statutory living wage, because without that they can't survive. So I think we need a much more humane society really than we actually have. From Janet Bales. It is scary that necessary care will not be available to so many if this insurance charge goes ahead. Absolutely right. It is a scary thing. The interesting thing is you can check my speech, which is on Hansard. I have a page. If you put my name on Google, followed by House of Lords, you will see my page. I think, I mean, I couldn't help really wondering whether the Conservative Party is just waiting to see how the policy pieces land from this Peter Lilly bill and then jump on this bandwagon and then say, right, this is what we need to do for the National Health Service. It is utterly inappropriate. It does not provide for universal care. We need collective rights. Otherwise, we really end up abandoning some people, and their only crime is that they are poor. They're only poor because social arrangements have made them poor. So if we really believe in a decent society, we really need to provide universal free care for everybody. Let me see if I've missed anybody. Apologies. Let me just scroll back. There's quite a few messages here. Lorraine Midland, which is on the Facebook page. Absolutely right. That is what I really wanted to demystify, because throughout the media, the argument is, oh, well, we have an aging population. Well, yes, we have an aging population, but there are other people who need social care as well. For reasons so far not fully understood, the incidence of disability amongst a lot of adults is increasing. And we keep wondering whether it is to do with addiction to alcohol, perhaps, addiction to drugs, we don't know. Gambling has certainly caused lots of mental problems. And I'm a member of an all-party parliamentary group on gambling, and we are pushing the government for gambling reforms. Amongst other things, we want a total ban on the use of debit cards for gambling. Government has already banned the use of credit cards, but the difficulty is that there are lots of internet companies from all over the world who operate here. So there are lots of other issues, but we are pushing for that. So certainly anyone in our family, in our neighborhood will need social care, can need social care, and we need to make sure that nobody's really excluded. Cheryl English, I hope wishes tailing elections to Parliament so that we can change the composition of the Parliament so that people can identify there with the concerns felt by ordinary people. And the danger is that so many of these billionaires just don't really do this. Okay, anything else coming through? If nothing else is coming through, well, I say, well, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm not sure whether the Back to 60 group needs to do anything here to save this session, or whether I need to just end the live video. Maybe Anne or Joanne can give me a call in case I terminate this, and whether they need to record something, I do not know. Well, thank you very much, and I wish you all a good evening.